Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. One of a kind. Well, there are many readings going on, but I think this may be the only one that's going on every single day without fail, 7 days a week. So you've joined an elite group. We're up to 1,590, maybe more. I haven't checked the last couple of days. Followers. Srimad-Bhagavatam, we're reading the ripened fruit of the Vedas. Sanatana Goswami had something to say about them. Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram from Sri Krishna Leela Stava, texts 412 through 416, in case you want to get the book. Check it out. Check the reference. By Sanatana Goswami. Okay, it goes like this. Sarvashashrabdipiyusha Sarvavedaika Satvala Sarvasiddhantaragnagya Sarvalokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mind of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidwandunita Nitya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Sarasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madekavando Matsangin Madguro Madmahadana Mandistadaka Madbhagya Madhananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth. Sadhu Sadhu Tadayin Atini Chochatakara Anamunchagadachimam Premnarik Kandayosura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So continuing with the 5th canto, 22nd chapter, the orbits of the planets, starting with text 11. There are many stars located 300,000 yojanas, 2,400,000 miles above the moon. By the supreme will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are fixed to the wheel of time, and thus they rotate with Mount Sumeru on their right, their motion being different from that of the sun. There are 28 important stars headed by Abhijit. Purport. The stars referred to herein are 3,200,000 miles above the sun, and they are 4 million miles above the earth.
You used to have different numbers than what you were saying.
Yeah, this is corrected.
Okay.
Yeah, this is corrected. Text 12. Some 1,600,000 miles above this group of stars is the planet Venus, which moves at almost exactly the same pace as the sun, according to swift, slow, and moderate movements. Sometimes Venus moves behind the sun, sometimes in front of the sun, and sometimes along with it. Venus nullifies the influence of planets that are obstacles to rainfall. Consequently, its presence causes rainfall. It is therefore considered very favorable for all living beings within this universe. This has been accepted by learned scholars. Text 13. Mercury is described to be similar to Venus in that it moves sometimes behind the sun, sometimes in front of the sun, and sometimes along with it. It is 1,600,000 miles above Venus, or 7,200,000 miles above Earth. Mercury, which is the son of the moon, is almost always very auspicious for the inhabitants of the universe, but when it does not move along with the sun, it forebodes cyclones, dust, irregular rainfall, and waterless clouds. In this way, it creates fearful conditions due to inadequate or excessive rainfall. Text 14. Situated 1,600,000 miles above Mercury, or 8,800,000 miles above the Earth, is the planet Mars. If this planet does not travel in a crooked way, it crosses through each sign of the zodiac in 3 fortnights, and in this way travels through all 12, one after another. It almost always creates unfavorable conditions in respect to rainfall and other influences. Text 15. Situated 1,600,000 miles above Mars, or 10,400,000 miles above the Earth, is the planet Jupiter, which travels through one sign of the zodiac within a period of a parivatsara, if its movement is favorable to the brahmanas of the universe. Text 16. Circle in 30 anuvatsaras. This planet is always very inauspicious for the universal situation. Situated 8,800,000 miles above Saturn, or 2,000 miles above Earth, are the seventh same being of the inhabitants of the universe. They circumambulate the supreme abode of Lord Vishnu, known as Dhruva Loka, the pole star. Purport. Srila Madhvacharya quotes the following verse from the Brahmanda Purana. Jnananandat Mukho Vishnu Shushumara Vapushyata Urdva Lokeshu Savyapa Vyapta Adityanyas Tadashrita. Lord Vishnu, who is the source of knowledge and transcendental bliss, has assumed the form of Shishumara in the seventh heaven, which is situated in the topmost level of the universe. All the other planets, beginning with the sun, exist under the shelter of this Shishumara planetary system. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 22nd chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Orbits of the Planets. Okay, chapter 23, the Shishumara planetary systems. This chapter describes how all the planetary systems take shelter of the pole star, Dhruva Loka. It also describes the totality of these planetary systems to be Shishumara, another expansion of the external body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dhruva Loka, the abode of Lord Vishnu within this universe, is situated 1,300,000 yojanas from the 7 stars. In the planetary system of Dhruva Loka are the planets of the fire god Indra, Prajapati, Kashyapa, and Dharma, all of whom are very respectful to the great devotee Dhruva, who lives on the pole star. Like bulls yoked to a central pivot, all the planetary systems revolve around Dhruva Loka, impelled by eternal time. Those who worship the universal form of the Lord conceive of this entire rotating system of planets as an animal known as Shishumara. This imaginary Shishumara is another form of the Lord. The head of the Shishumara form is downward, and its body and tail are Prajapati, Agni, Indra, and Dharma, and on the root of the tail are Data and Vidasages. The entire body of the Shishumara faces toward its right and appears like a coil of stars. On the right side of this coil are the 14 prominent stars from Abhijit to Punarvasu, and then on the left side are the 14 prominent stars from Pusha to Uttarashada. The stars known as Punarvasu and Pusha are on the right and left hips of the Shishumara, and the stars known as Ardra and Ashlesha are on the right and left feet of the Shishumara. Other stars are also fixed on different sides of the Shishumara planetary system according to the calculations of Vedic astronomers. To concentrate their minds, yogis worship the Shishumara planetary system, which is technically known as the Kundalini Chakra. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, 1,300,000 yojanas, 10,400,000 miles above the planets of the seven sages, is a planet that learned scholars of Lord Vishnu. There, the son of Maharaj Uttanapad, the great devotee Maharaj Dhruva, still resides as the life source of all the living entities who live until the end of the creation. Agni, Indra, Prajapati, Kashyapa, and Dharma all ascend and respectful obeisances. They certainly, I have already described the glorious activities of Maharaj Dhruva in the fourth canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Text 2. Established by the supreme will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pole star, which is the planet of Maharaj Dhruva, constantly shines as the central pivot for all these stars and planets. The unsleeping, invisible, most powerful time factor causes these luminaries to revolve around the pole star without cessation. Stated herein that all the luminaries, the planets and stars, revolve by the influence of the supreme time factor. The time factor is another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone is under the influence of the time factor, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so kind and loves his devotee Maharaj Dhruva so much that he has placed all the luminaries under the control of Dhruva's planet and has arranged for the time factor to work under him, or everything is actually done according to the will under his control. Text 3. When bulls are yoked together and tied to a central post to thresh rice, they tread around that pivot without deviating from their proper positions, one bull being closest to the post, another in the middle, and a third on the outside. Similarly, all the planets and all the hundreds and thousands of stars revolve around the pole star, the planet of Maharaj Dhruva, in their respective orbits, some higher and some lower, fastened by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to the machine of material nature, according to the results of their fruitive acts. They are driven around the pole star by the wind and will continue to be so until the end of creation. These planets float in the air within the vast sky, just as clouds with hundreds of tons of water float in the air, or as great Shena eagles, due to the results of past activities, fly high in the sky and have no chance of falling to the ground. Purport. According to the description, and thousands of stars and great planets such as the Sun, Moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, and because of the law of gravity, or any similar idea of the modern scientists. These planets and stars are all servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, or Krishna, and according to his order, they sit in their chariots and travel in their respective orbits. The orbits in which they move are compared to machines given by material nature to the operating deities of the stars and planets, who carry out the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by revolving around Dhruvaloka, which is occupied by the great devotee Maharaj Dhruva. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 552 as follows: Yach chakshur esha savita sakala grahanam raja samasta sudamurtir asheshate jaha yas yagyaya brahmadik sambritat kala chakro govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under whose control even the sun, which is considered to be the eye of the Lord, rotates within the fixed orbit of eternal time. The sun is the king of all planetary systems and has unlimited potency in heat and light. This verse from Brahma Samhita confirms that even the largest and most powerful planet, the sun, rotates within a fixed orbit, or Kala Chakra, in obedience to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This has nothing to do with gravity or any other imaginary laws created by the material scientists. Material scientists want to avoid the ruling government of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a nice statement. I like this one too much. Material scientists want to avoid the ruling government of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore they imagine different conditions under which they suppose the planets move. The only condition, however, is the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, they calculate by the movements mathematical formulas, and then they say that that's how but they're not saying what's causing it. Even if they say gravity, they're not saying what causes gravity. They have no idea, actually. Material scientists want to avoid the ruling government of the Supreme Personality, and then they do their experiments with the motive of disproving that there's a God. They don't do their scientists, they're not really scientists, because the real scientist has an open mind and he does an experiment, and then what the results come out, then but these people have atheism at the front, so they make the experiments, to try to prove that there's no God, not to neutrally figure it out whether there is or not. Material scientists want to avoid the ruling government of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore they imagine different conditions under which they suppose the planets move. The only condition, however, is the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All the various predominating deities of the planets are persons, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also a person. The Supreme Personality orders the subordinate persons, the demigods of various names, to carry out his supreme will. This fact is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:10, wherein Krishna says, Maya yakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunani nikonteya jagad viparivartate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. The orbits of the planets resemble the bodies in which all living entities are seated, because they are both machines controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 18:61, Ishvara sarvabhutanam ridvisharjuna tishtati brahmiyam sarvabhutani yantrarudani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wandering as on a machine made of the material energy. The machine given by material name of the orbit, or the Kala Chakra, works according to the orders given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and material nature work together to maintain this great universe, and not only this universe, but also the million of other universes beyond this one. The question of how the planets and stars are floating is also answered in this verse. It is not because of the laws of gravity. Rather, the planets and stars are in air. It is due to such manipulations that big heavy clouds float and big eagles fly in the sky. Modern airplanes like the 747 jet aircraft work in a similar way. By controlling the air, they float high in the sky, resisting the tendency to fall to earth. Most of the time. Hare Krishna. Such adjustments of the air are all made possible by the cooperation of the principle of Purusha, male, and Prakriti, female. By the cooperation of material nature, which is considered to be Prakriti, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is considered the Purusha, all the affairs of the universe are going on nicely in their proper order. Prakriti Material nature is also described in the Brahma Samhita 544 as follows. Shristi stiti pralayasana chakta eka chaye vayasya bhuvanani vivarti durga ichchanu rupam abhiyasya chacheshtate sa govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. The external potency Maya, who is the nature of the shadow of the chit spiritual potency, is worshipped by all people as Durga, the creating, preserving, and destroying agency of this material world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, in accordance with whose will Durga conducts herself. Material nature, the external energy of the Supreme Lord, is also known as Durga, or the female energy that protects the great fort of this universe. The word Durga also means fort. This universe is just like a great fort in which all the conditioned souls are kept, and they cannot leave it unless they are liberated by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord Himself declares in Bhagavad Gita 4:9, Evam yo veti tatpataha chaktva deham punar janma naitimam iti sorjana. One who knows the trends and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. And there in a nutshell is why it's important to learn these books. Thus, simply by Krishna consciousness, by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be liberated, or in other words, one can be released from the great fort of this universe and go outside it to the spiritual world. It is also significant that the predominating deities of even the greatest planets have been offered their exalted posts because of the very valuable pious activities they performed in previous births. This is indicated herein by the words karma nimitta gataya. For example, as we have previously discussed, the moon is called Jiva, which means that he is a living entity like us, but because of his pious activities, he has been appointed to the post as the moon god. Similarly, all the demigods are living entities who have been appointed to their various posts as the masters of the moon, the earth, Venus, and so on, because of their great service and pious acts. Only the predominating deity of the sun, Surya Narayana, is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maharaj Dhruva, the predominating deity of Dhruva Loka, is also a living entity. Thus, there are two kinds of entities: the Supreme Entity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the ordinary living entity, the Jiva. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam, Kata Upanishad 2.2.13. All the demigods are engaged in the service of the Lord, and only by such an arrangement are the affairs of the universe going on. It is understood that there are eagles so big that they can prey on big elephants. They fly so high that they can travel from one planet to another. They start flying in one planet and land in another, and while in flight they lay eggs that hatch into other birds while falling through the air. In Sanskrit, such eagles are called shena. Under the present circumstances, of course, we cannot see such huge birds, but at least we know of eagles that can capture monkeys and then throw them down to kill and eat them. Similarly, it is understood that there are gigantic birds that can carry off elephants, kill them, and eat them. The two examples of the eagle and the cloud are sufficient to prove that flying and floating can be made possible through adjustments of air. The planets, in a similar way, are floating because material nature adjusts the air according to the orders of the Supreme Lord. It could be said that these adjustments constitute the law of gravity, but in any case, one must accept that these laws are made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The so-called scientists have no control over them. The scientists can falsely, improperly declare that there is no God, but this is not a fact. Text 4. This great machine, consisting of the stars and planets, resembles the form of a Shishumara, dolphin, in the water. It is sometimes considered an incarnation of Krishna, Vasudeva. Great yogis meditate upon Vasudeva in this form because it is actually visible. Purport. Transcendentalists, such as yogis whose minds cannot accommodate the form of the Lord, prefer to visualize something very great, such as the Virat Purusha. Therefore, some yogis contemplate this imaginary Shishumara to be swimming in the sky, the way a dolphin swims in water. They meditate upon it as the Virat Rupa, the gigantic form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 5. This form of the Shishumara has its head downward and its body coiled. On the end of its tail is the planet of Dhruva. On the body of its tail are the planets of the demigods Prajapati, Agni, Indra, and Dharma. And at the base of its tail are the planets of the demigods Datta and Vidata. Where the hips might be on the Shishumara are the 7 saintly sages like Vishishta and Angira. The coiled body of the Shishumara chakra turns toward its right side, from which the 14 constellations from Abhijit to Purnavasu are located. On its left side are the 14 stars from Pusha to Uttarashada. Thus, its body is balanced because its sides are occupied by an equal number of stars. On the back of the Shishumara is the group of stars known as Ajaviti, and on its abdomen is the Ganges that flows in the sky, the Milky Way. Text 6. On the right and left side of where the loins might be on the Shishumara chakra are the stars named Purnarvasu and Pusha. Ardra and Ashlesha are in Uttarashadha are on its right and left nostril. Purvashada are at its right and left eyes, and Danishta and Mula are on its right and left ears. The eight stars from Magha to Anuradha, which mark the southern course, are on the ribs of the left of its Bhadra, which mark the northern course, are on the ribs on the right side. Chatabisha and Jeshta are on the right and left shoulders. Text 7. On the upper chin of the Shishumara is Agasti, on its lower chin, Yamaraj, on its mouth, Mars, on its genitals, Saturn, on the back of its neck, Jupiter, on its chest, the Sun, and within the core of its heart, Narayana. Within its mind is the moon, on its navel, Venus, and on its breasts, the Ashwini Kumaras, which is known as Pranapana. 8. My dear King, the body of the Shishumara, as thus described, should be considered the external form of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Morning, noon, and evening, one should silently observe the form of the Lord as the Shishumara chakra and worship him with this mantra. O Lord, who have assumed the form of time, O resting place of all the planets, moving in different orbits, O Master of all demigods, O Supreme Person, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you and meditate upon you. The body of the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, which forms the Shishumara chakras and all the stars and planets. One who chants this mantra to worship that Supreme Person 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening, will surely be freed from all sinful reactions. If one simply offers his obeisances to this form or remembers this form 3 times a day, all his recent sinful activities will be destroyed. Purport. Summarizing the entire description of the planetary systems of the universe, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that one who was able to meditate upon this arrangement as the Virat Rupa or Vishwarupa, the external body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and worship him 3 times a day by meditation, will always be free from all sinful reactions. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur estimates that Dhruvaloka, the pole star, is 3,800,000 yojanas above the sun. Above Dhruvaloka by 10 million yojanas is Maharloka. Above Maharloka is by 20 million yojanas is Janaloka. Above Janaloka is by 80 million yojanas is Tapaloka. And above Tapaloka by 120 million yojanas is Satyaloka. Thus the distance from the sun to Satyaloka is 233,800,000 yojanas, or 1,870,400,000 miles. Is that right? Yes. The Vaikuntha planets begin 26,200 yojanas, 209,600,000 miles above Satyaloka. Thus, the Vishnu Purana describes that the covering of the universe is 260 million yojanas, 2,080,000,000 miles away from the sun. The distance from the sun to the earth is 100,000 yojanas, and below the earth by 70,000 yojanas are the 7 lower planetary systems called Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. Below these lower planets by 30,000 yojanas, Sheshanaga is lying on the Garbhodak ocean. That ocean is 249,800,000 yojans deep. Thus, the total diameter of the universe is approximately 500 million yojanas, or 4 billion miles. Thus, then, the Bhaktivedanta purports on the 5th canto, 23rd title, Shishumar, planetary system. Geography lesson here. Okay, chapter 24. The subterranean heavenly is situated below the sun and moon. It is between these 2 planets and the earth. When Rahu conceals the sun and moon, eclipses occur, either total or partial, depending on whether Rahu moves in a straight or curving way. Below Rahu, by another 10,000 yojanas, are the planets of the Siddhas, Charanas, and Vidyadharas. And below these planets, such as Yakshaloka and Rakshaloka, are planets such as Yakshaloka and Rakshaloka. Below these planets is the earth, and 70,000 yojanas below the earth are the lower planetary systems, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. Demons and Rakshasas live in these lower planetary systems with their wives and children, always engaged in sense gratification and not fearing their next births. The sunshine does not reach these planets, but they are illuminated by jewels fixed upon the hoods of snakes. Because of these shining gems, there is practically no darkness. Those living in these planets do not become old or diseased, and they are not afraid of death from any cause but the time factor, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the planet Atala, the yawning of a demon has produced 3 kinds of women, called Swairini, independent, Kamini, lusty, and Pumshali, very easily subdued by men. Below Atala is the planet Vitala, wherein Lord Shiva and his wife Gauri reside. Because of their presence, a kind of gold is produced, called Hataka. Below Vitala is the planet Sutala, the abode of Bali Maharaj, the most fortunate king. Bali Maharaj was favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vamanadev, because of his intense devotional service. The Lord went to the sacrificial arena of Bali Maharaj and begged him for 3 paces of land. And on this plea, the Lord took from him all his possessions. When Bali Maharaj agreed to all this, the Lord was very pleased, and therefore the Lord served. The description of Bali Maharaj appears in when the Supreme Personality of Godhead offers a devotee material happiness. This is not his real favor. The demigods, who are very puffed up by their material opulence, pray to the Lord only for material happiness, not knowing anything better. Devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, however, do not want material happiness. Not to speak of material happiness, they do not want even liberation from material bondage. Although one can achieve this liberation simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, even with improper pronunciation. Below Sutala is the planet Talatala, the abode of the demon Maya. This demon is always materially happy because he is favored by Lord Shiva, but he cannot achieve spiritual happiness at any time. Below Talatala is the planet Mahatala, where there are many snakes with hundreds of thousands of heads, of hoods. Below Mahatala is Rasatala, and below that is Patala, where the serpent Vasuki lives with his associates. Text 1. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, My dear king, some historians, the speakers of the Puranas, say that 10,000 yojanas, 80,000 miles below the sun, is the planet known as Rahu, which moves like one of the stars. The presiding deity of that planet, who is the son of Singhika, is the most abominable of all asuras. But although he is completely unfit to assume the position of a demigod or planetary deity, he has achieved that position by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Later, I shall speak further about him. Text 2. The sun globe, which is a source of heat, extends for 10,000 yojanas, 80,000 miles. The moon extends for 20,000 yojanas, 160,000 miles. And Rahu extends for 30,000 yojanas, 240,000 miles. Formerly, when nectar was being distributed, Rahu tried to create dissension between the sun and moon by interposing himself between them. Rahu is inimical toward both the sun and the moon, and therefore he always tries to cover the sunshine and moonshine on the dark moon day and full moon night. Purport. As stated herein, the sun extends for 10,000 yojanas, and the moon extends for twice that, or 20,000 yojanas. The word dvadasha should be understood to mean twice as much as 10, or 20. In the opinion of Vijayadwaj, the extent of Rahu should be twice that of the moon, or 40,000 yojanas. However, to reconcile this apparent contradiction to the text of the Bhagavatam, Vijayadwaj cites the following quotation concerning Rahu. Rahu soma ravinam tu mandala dvi gunoktitam. This means that Rahu is twice as large as the moon, which is twice as large as the sun. This is the conclusion of the commentator Vijayadwaj. Text 3. After hearing from the sun and moon demigods about Rahu's attack, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, engages his disc, known as the Sudarshan Chakra, to protect them. The Sudarshan Chakra is the Lord's most beloved devotee and is favored by the Lord. The intense heat of its effulgence, meant for killing non-Vaishnavas, is unbearable to Rahu, and therefore he flees in fear of it. During the time Rahu disturbs the sun or moon, there occurs what people commonly know as an eclipse. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is always the protector of his devotees, who are also known as demigods. The controlling demigods are most obedient to Lord Vishnu, although they also want material sense enjoyment. And that is why they are called demigods, or almost godly. Although Rahu attempts to attack both the sun and the moon, they are protected by Lord Vishnu. Being very afraid of Lord Vishnu's chakra, Rahu cannot stay in front of the sun or moon for more than a muhurta, 48 minutes. The phenomenon that occurs when Rahu blocks the light of the sun or moon is called an eclipse. The attempt of the scientists of this earth to go to the moon is as demoniac as Rahu's attack. Of course, their attempts will be failures because no one can enter the moon or sun so easily. Like the attack of Rahu, such attempts will certainly be failures. Text 4. Below Rahu, or 10,000 yojanas, 80,000 miles, are the planets known as Siddhaloka, Charnaloka, and Vidyadaraloka. Purport. It is said that the residents of Siddhaloka, being naturally endowed with the powers of yogis, can go from one planet to another by their natural mystic powers without using airplanes or similar machines. Text 5. Charanaloka and Siddhaloka in the sky called Antariksha are the places for enjoyment for the yakshas, rakshasas, pishachas, ghosts, and so on. Antariksha extends as far as the wind blows and the clouds float in the sky. The yakshas and rakshasas, by distance 100 miles, is the planet Earth. Its upper limits extend as high as swans, hawks, eagles, and similar large birds can fly. Text 7. My dear king, beneath this earth are 7 other planets known as Atala, Vitatala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. I have already described the situation of the planetary systems of Earth. The width and length of the 7 lower planetary systems are calculated to be exactly the same as those of Earth. Text 8. In these 7 planetary systems, which are also known as the subterranean heavens, Bilva Swarga, there are very beautiful houses, gardens, and places of sense enjoyment, which are even more opulent than those in the higher planets, sensual pleasure, wealth, and influence. Most holders, the wives, children, friends, and society are all fully engaged in illusory material enjoyment of the demigods is sometimes disturbed with the residents of these planets. Thus they are understood to be very attached to illusory happiness. Purport. According to the statements of Prahlad Maharaj, material enjoyment is Maya Sukha, illusory enjoyment. A Vaishnava is full of anxieties for the deliverance of all living entities from such false enjoyment. Prahlad Maharaj says, Maya Sukhaya Baram Udbha Srimad-Bhagavatam 7.9.43. Thus fools, vimudhas, are engaged in material temporary. Whether in the heavenly planets, the lower planets, or the earthly planets, people are engrossed in temporary material happiness, forgetting that in due course change their bodies according to the material laws and suffer the repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. Not caring what will happen in the next birth, gross materialists are simply busy enjoying during the present short span of life. A Vaishnava of spiritual bliss. Text 9. My dear king, there is a great demon named Maya Danava, who is an expert artist and architect. He has constructed many brilliantly decorated cities. There are many wonderful houses, walls, gates, assembly houses, temples, yards, and temple compounds, as well as many hotels serving as residential quarters for foreigners. The houses for the leaders of these planets are constructed and always crowded with living entities known as Nagas and Asuras, as well as many others. All in all, these imitation heavenly cities are most beautifully situated and attractively decorated. Text 10. The parks and gardens in the artificial heavens surpass in beauty those of the upper heavenly planets. The tree creepers, embraced by creepers, bend with a heavy burden of twigs with fruits and flowers, and therefore they appear extraordinarily beautiful. That beauty could attract anyone and make his mind fully blossom in the pleasure of sense gratification. There are many lakes and reservoirs of clear, transparent water, agitated by jumping fish, and decorated with many flowers, such as lilies, kuvalayas, kalahas, and blue and red lotuses. Pairs of chakrabakas and many other water birds nest in the lakes and always enjoy in a happy mood, making sweet, pleasing vibrations that are very satisfying and conducive to enjoyment of the senses. Text 11. Since there is no sunshine in those subterranean planets, time is not divided into days and nights. And consequently, fear produced by time does not exist. Many great serpents reside there with gems on their hoods, and the effulgence of these gems directions. Text 13. Since the residents of these planets drink and bathe in juices and elixirs made from wonderful herbs, they are freed from all anxieties and physical diseases. They have no experience of gray hair, wrinkles, or invalidity. Their bodily lusters do not fade. Their perspiration does not cause a bad smell. And they are not troubled by fatigue or by lack of energy or enthusiasm due to old age. Text 14. They live very auspiciously and do not fear death from anything but death's established time, which is the effulgence of the Sudarshan Chakra of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. This is the defect of material existence. Everything in the subterranean heavens is very nicely arranged. There are well-situated residential quarters, there is pleasing atmosphere, and there are no bodily inconveniences or mental anxieties. But nevertheless, those who live there have to take another birth according to karma. Persons whose minds are dull cannot understand this defect of a materialistic civilization, aiming at material comforts. One may make his living conditions very pleasing for the senses, but despite all favorable conditions, one must, in due course of time, meet death. The members of a demoniac civilization endeavor to make their living conditions very comfortable, but they cannot check death. The influence of the Sudarshan Chakra will not allow their so-called material happiness to endure. Text 15. When the Sudarshan disc enters those provinces, the pregnant wives of the demons all have miscarriages due to fear of its effulgence. Text 16. My dear king, I shall now describe to you the lower planetary system. So one thing that it wasn't so clear in the text, but we've heard this from commentary, that they have no, sense of their old age and everything. There's no, but then all of a sudden, without any warning, they just die. In other words, there's no warning for death, so they don't have any impetus to prepare for it. So they have no spiritual life whatsoever. None. Zilch. Zilp. Zip. So we'll stop here. Yes. Pranata Karuna.
Not that you but we started.
I just had a question about what you just said before you ended. About, somebody asked me this before also, and I was wondering. They have no impetus to prepare for death, but what about when people are dying around them?
They don't notice. Just like we don't notice. I mean, we notice, then we immediately forget. But there it's more, here it's the same, but there it's more extreme.
Thank you.
How do they die?
How do they die? They just die.
Because you said that there was no disease.
They drop dead.
Sudarshan.
One breath. Ooh, that's it. Something like that.
No disease, no pain, no suffering.
In the heavenly planets, I think they have garlands that fade.
Wait, say that again?
I guess it's the heavenly planets where garlands fade before death. Right? There's garlands in the heavenly planets they have, and there's no sign of death except the garlands start to fade.
Well, no, in the heavenly planets, there's all kinds of signs. Because sometimes the demons come there and try to, attack, take over, and there's all kinds of things that happen there that don't happen in the subterranean heavenly planets. And notice that the Varshas around the earth are also have that Swarga. There's Bilba Swarga, there's what's the name of it? And then there's Swarga. So the earth is the only planet that's like completely karmic oriented. And all the other ones, they don't have the same perception of karma as we do in this planet. And therefore, people have to come down and go up in order to go to Earth too. This is like the gateway. You know, it's not only the gateway to the lower and higher planets, but it's also the gateway to the spiritual world. That's revealed in the Bhagavatam, which maybe we can read to you one day. Yes.
I have a realization and a question. First, when we were reading this, I have this realization. We were reading text 8. In these 7 planetary systems, which are also known as the subterranean heavens, Bila Swarga, there are very beautiful houses, gardens, and places of sense enjoyment which are even more opulent than those in the higher planets, because the demons have a very high standard of sensual pleasure, wealth, and influence. Most of the residents of these planets, who are known as the Daityas, Danavas, and Nagas, live as householders. Their wives, children, friends, and society are all fully engaged in illusory material happiness. The sense enjoyment of the demigods is sometimes disturbed, but the residents of these planets enjoy life without disturbances. Thus, they are understood to be very attached to illusory happiness. As we read this, I thought that this sounds so hellish, and I finally understood what it means to want to enjoy separately from Krishna. And then when we read from text 14, it said the influence of the Sudarshan chakra will not allow their so-called material happiness to endure. I thought this was merciful.
True.
My question is, sorry, I'm just learning how to work this thing. Oh, okay. This is my question. Oh wait, I'm lying, hold on.
Get yourself organized, please.
I can't find it.
Does anybody have any other? Yeah, okay, Doug. You can try to find it while we.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Bhakta Doug.
I have a question about something Prabhupada said. He said that the planets and the reason that they're floating is due to some sort of manipulation of the air. Is that correct?
Mm.
And then in this verse, in the chapter that we're in now, it says that Antariksha extends as far as the wind blows and the clouds float in the sky. Above this, there is no more air. It says there's a lot of different planets above that system, correct?
They're not float. Those planets are not floating in air.
Okay.
I mean, there's other places where it's described that there are ropes, subtle ropes that manipulate things. But the other thing is that I thought that same thing. And actually the super soul, when the super soul enters into the material energy at the very beginning, he enters into each atom of the universe. So this is how Krishna arranges everything through time. Because the super soul, time is Krishna inside all the atoms of the universe. And they come together and break apart according to the karma of all the individual living entities that have bodies. And those bodies are made up of atoms, the forms are made up of atoms. And it's time that's actually forcing the forms to change. So ultimately, it's the super soul.
Okay.
So even in places where it doesn't seem like air is doing it or air is not doing it, it's all being conducted by the super soul, who's in every atom of the universe.
Okay. That's satisfying. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I found it.
You found it. Okay.
I'll be more organized next time.
Okay, thank you.
This is my question. Devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, however, do not want material happiness. Not to speak of material happiness, they do not want even liberation from material bondage. Although one can achieve this liberation simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, even with improper pronunciation. My question is sometimes I've heard devotees say that we can go on lifetimes chanting Hare Krishna, and one of the 10 offenses that prohibits one from achieving prema, which is what you have to go back to Godhead, is to be inattentive while chanting. So
You go back to Godhead by pure chanting, without offense, no offense. So liberation can be achieved by namabhasa, which means the stage in between offensive and inoffensive chanting. So it's possible to get liberation even while chanting, not properly pronunciation. But if you want to get Krishna Prema, then you should do everything perfectly, without offense. Because it depends on the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. See, to get Prema, you need to be chosen by Krishna. You need special mercy coming from Krishna's liberated devotees. And the reason why devotees like Prahlad are not interested in liberation is because they're already liberated. That's why it says they're not interested in liberation. They're already liberated. It's not that they're not interested in liberation and they're attached to the material world. It's not like that. If you become fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna 24/7, you're no longer in this material world, even if you look like you're in the material world. Therefore, those who are fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, they don't care for liberation.
you have to be chosen to be fully absorbed.
You have to be chosen to go back to Goloka Vrindavan.
Oh, so it's our choice to be.
You have to choose to try to be fully absorbed. But in order to be fully absorbed and then go back to Godhead to get full love of Krishna, then you have to achieve the favor, the blessings of the Brajvasis, or if you're a Vaikuntha, well, if you want to go to Vaikuntha, then you have to get the blessings of the Vaikuntha devotees. It's not all about you. So when we're in the material world, in the material body, we have a tendency to think it's all about us. And therefore we think of everything in those terms. And it's sometimes hard for us to hear and understand these kind of statements that are not quite, ordinary, not quite according to the laws that we're used to, the ways of thinking about things that we're used to. That's why these descriptions are so far out.
Question from cyberspace.
Question from cyberspace.
From Vilas Manjari Dasi.
Hare Krishna Vilas Manjari.
Hi Krishna
I hope you're
Maharaj.
getting well from your accident.
Please accept my humble obeisances. Are the residents of these other planets accruing karma? Or are they living out karmic reactions? Is it only on Earth as humans that karma is accrued?
Yes,
Accrued.
yes. That's already been described. It's hard to take this all in all at once, but we heard that already, that the Earth planet, the Bhartvarshas, the good and bad karma are there, and we're making our place for our next birth. Yes, Sarva.
And is it correct that on the earth only the human beings create karma?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. The animals don't create good karma and bad karma, but at the same time, there are pious trees and impious trees. Impious, then you'll die. That's impious tree. And a pious tree, I mean, how they, those laws are very complex, and you can't figure it all out just by, getting out a slide rule and calculating something, or, making an app for it. They don't have any app that can figure this out. It's too complicated, But there are ways that a living being will be so impious, they'll get into an impious tree, and very impious, but get into a pious tree. But that won't be as pious as a dolphin.
But once they get in that body, they just live out that karma?
Yes, they spend a certain amount of time in that body. It's calculated by the number of breaths, or in the fish, I don't know what it is, breaths. It's something like breaths, and a time, certain amount of time. And if they're taken out of the body before they're prematurely by some, accident or some willful, murder, then they have to come back into that body again. That's the real reason, the real definition of violence, because if you kill all these animals, you're preventing them from going through their natural cycle to go to a higher, species of life, and finally to the human form, and the ability. In the human form of life, we get the chance. That's why the beginning aphorism is atato. Atato means now. So atato brahma jigyasa, now is the time to inquire about the absolute truth. Means now that you have a human form, because no other form except the human form can read it.
I've heard this from other devotees, and it happened to me the other day. There was a spider in my room, and my roommate said if I chant Hare Krishna and kill it, it's okay. And I felt like I shouldn't do it, but I did it, and I cried afterwards. Was it wrong?
Yes.
I felt so bad.
But the only if you're in a place where malaria is, common, and a mosquito comes and gets on you and it's going to bite you, then you can kill it without karmic reaction. There's 7 ways, seven justifications for killing. In other words, you won't get a karmic reaction. You may get, according to the laws in the particular state, you may get punished in different ways. But according to the laws of God, if somebody comes and steals your property, comes to kill you, like that, those things that if somebody does, you have a right karmically. And even if the people around you in the law or the country doesn't understand that, you won't be karmic, held accountable. So anyway, it pays to follow the law of God. It pays to find out what the laws are and follow them. It's the safest path. Yes, Sarva.
On earth, is the free will of the human beings somehow more developed than on other planets? It seems like free will has something to do with karma. Anyway, that's not a very good question.
Well, it's a little confused. Free will and predestination go on at the same time. They're going on simultaneously in one person. But the free will that Krishna talks about in the Gita, which is tattva vitu mahabaho, guna karma, vibhagayo, guna, guneshu vartanta, idimat panasajate. That's 328. Just checking myself to make sure I know what I'm talking about. So don't want to say anything that's not correct. 3:20. I'm right, 3:28. We highly recommend that you learn these books. Tattvavitu mahabaho, guna karma vibhanga yoho. Guna, guneshu vartanta, itimatva nisajjate. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, Almighty Armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work and devotion and work for fruitive results. That is free will. If you know the difference between work and devotion and work for fruitive results, then you can choose one over the other. That's how you get your free will. The other free will is conducted by the modes of nature, as described in the verse before it. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So our senses tell us to do something. Our ears hear something that's very attractive to us and want to go there and hear it. Or eyes, and some things we go, not interested. This isn't us, this is the modes of nature, and we're being pulled around by the modes of nature. That's not free will. So, but we have a body from what we've done in our previous lifetimes, and there's what is called prarabdha karma, or the mature results of our karmic activities in this particular body and mind. Prarabdha karma. And therefore we act in a certain way, we do certain things you know, a dog barks and a cat meows, you know, because they've got that body from previous lifetimes. It's fixed. Those kinds of things are fixed. But the animals don't have the intelligence to figure out what is the difference between devotional service and fruitive activity. Therefore, they don't have free will. They have some intelligence. There's some discrimination. The plant will grow towards the sun. You know, if you put something in its way, it'll grow around it sometimes. So there's some elementary intelligence, but it's not free will exactly. It's conducted by the modes of nature. So therefore, when we have a certain karma and we hear about the laws of nature given from the Vedas, then we can make a choice and we can improve. So even though we have a certain karma now fixed, at the same time, if we hear from a transcendental source and then agree to act like that, then our karma changes. Prabhupada used to say that in a kind of poetic way, and he said, if you are clapping in kirtan, then the lines will change. The karma is in your hands, or it's already there, but lines will change. Maybe not completely, but they will. Try it. It takes a long time to figure that one out, because you have to be clapping for a long time and then be attentive to what it was before and 15 years later what it is. And most people don't take the trouble to just figure that out.
There's somehow on heavenly planets, there must be some difference in the heavenly planets when people make choices in the heavenly planets. Or subterranean.
Same.
But I thought didn't they say that there was no karma?
Well, it's not, like I said, they're both happening at the same time. It's not a mechanical thing like that. They're freer in one sense. Their bodies are more subtle, and therefore they're freer. Just like when you dream, you can do things that you can't do with your gross body. Same soul, but you can decide to jump up in the air and fly around. You're still in the earth, but you're in your subtle body. So the upper planetary systems have more subtle body, and therefore they can do more things. But they're still using up their good karma. And when the good karma is used up, then they come back here. Chini marchi lokam. Chine punya marchi
Somehow they're
lokam.
not creating more karma.
No. They're not creating more karma.
Is it only by free will that you create karma?
It's not like that. It's not one or the other.
Okay.
It's more complex. Confirmed. By a local conductor. See, we can't figure,
Message
We can't figure it out like that. It doesn't work. We can't figure everything out like that. If we try to figure everything out like that, we won't be. It has to be revealed to us. Those levels of discrimination and understanding have to be revealed to us. But it's clear from the 9th chapter, text 20 and 21. Trividya mam somapa puttapapa jagyaya ishtva swargatim prartayante te punyam asadra surrender lokam vishnanti divyam dibideva bogan. Those who study the Vedas drink the soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly, purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planets of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. Then the next verse, Te tam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam chine punye marchalokam vishanti evam trayi dharmam anuprapana gadagatam kama labante. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So that's the general law. You may be able to find even exceptions sometimes, or aberrations, but that's the general law. By impious activity, we go down, either to a lower status of life, depending on the severity and the complications of karma. Plus, then you have all of our karmas all mixed together. None of us are just independent, completely independent. We're all connected together by the laws of our karmic, what they call, there's a branch of astrology that discusses group karma in terms of, country and, and race and all these things.
It's complicated.
It's very complicated. You can't figure it out like that. But there are just general laws. Cyberspace coming in. This is Houston. Houston calling cyberspace. Houston calling cyberspace. Go ahead.
Sorry. Dear Guru Maharaj, this is from Rati Manjari.
Hey Rati. Houston calling Amsterdam.
Sorry.
You can do it, you can do it. You can do it. Just gather yourself together, you can do it.
Please accept my humble obeisances. Does that mean that the demigod's behavior, be it virtuous or impious, has no consequences? Is it simply a matter of exhausting their pious credit?
The laws are not the same there. Everyone's trying to make the laws the same as they are here. Other places, they're different. There's many explanations where, heavenly society, when Arjuna went to Indraloka and he met his father, Indra is father of Arjuna. Did you know that? Indra's his father. So then Indra was very pleased to have his son there, and he was very famous. Arjuna was a very famous human. But he's not complete human because he's fathered by a demigod. So he had this one very beautiful society girl. And so Indra sent the girl to Arjuna's room and said, hey, I like you too much. Let's get together here. And Arjuna said, no, I can't do that. And he couldn't look at her. He said, you're with my father, and I'm your nephew, and that's not right. You can't do that. And she got really angry. She said, look, it's not like that here. There's no sin. There's no sin here for doing that. We have that facility, which you don't have on earth. Don't worry, it's okay. And Arjuna said, no, I can't. And then she cursed him. Yeah. Hell hath no fury like a woman's wrath. And that's why, in ignorance, we would like to go there. Yeah, then I can have very beautiful heavenly women, and there's no reaction, there's no sin. So why not go there? Because you're going to have to die, Baba. And when you die, you have to come back here and do it all over again. And, who knows what kind of body you're going to get. It's very risky business. This, trying to figure out a thing that we can do here and get a better deal, kind of like going to, would you buy a car from this used car salesman? The whole material nature is like that. Would you trust this man? In other words, there's no way out of this material world except for full surrender under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's it. Full stop. And now you found out about it. So,
Yes.
As who said? Who said? Nike or somebody? Just do it. Just do it. And the more we are addicted to that kind of analysis, we're trying to get out of it, or we're trying to manipulate it somehow or other in our own way, and we'll stay here. As long as we're still trying to do that, we'll stay here. Therefore, what was that? It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, that purport, you when you were editing that chapter, I think it's in the first chapter. Oh man. No, it's not. There's no first volume there. I know there's no first volume. Very nice statement. I think it's Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, remember this. It's 5:24:16. Don't let me forget. 5:24:16, because I'm going to lose my place, and I didn't write it down in the other place. Okay. Going to CC. This is a very nice purport. Chapter 1, verse 55, I think. Hope I'm right. Aha! I was right for once. Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's another book.
Okay.
Hang around
I'm ready.
and read them all.
Yes.
You'll be ready. You think you're
I'll be
ready?
then, huh?
You think you're ready now? Time will come. Time will come. Just keep reading these books.
Thanks.
Okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in His all-pervading feature. Well, this is, by the way, Adi Leela 155. The Personality of Godhead in His all-pervading feature of Paramatma enters every entity from the biggest to the most minute. His existence can be realized by one who has the single qualification of submissiveness, and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. Submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization, by which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person, as a man meets another man face to face. I rest my case. I'm moving on because I've got to record tomorrow morning and I got to get it at 2:30.
Thanks for sharing your time.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Go Premanandi. See you tomorrow night, same time, same station, 6:30 Central Time, USA. Hare Krishna. See you then.